Hey folks, this is Emily. I have some good news I want to share with you, and I want to talk with you about some weird mad science stuff. So, we're living in a weird time on Earth, right? A time of rapid change. Let's look at just a couple of big picture Earth systems. Like if we look at the year-to-date global surface temperature anomalies from the Copernicus Institute, we can see that in 2024, the anomaly is larger. We're hotter than we were at the end of 2023, but we're not increasing as quickly. The rate of change has gone down. And I want to show you this figure from earlier in the year, from Copernicus earlier in 2024, when they used to present the data more like this, where we could see the global surface temperature related to a 1.5 and 2, and where we could see the daily breakouts, where we could see in late 2023, we saw the first brief breach of the 2C threshold, and we saw that again in February of 24. We are still over this 1.5C threshold as we get to the end of 24, but it is difficult to tell from the publicly available how often we're continuing to hit those breaches. And if we take a look over at the Climate Reanalyzer, another important source of data, and review the sea surface temperatures for the last couple of years, we can see that this unusual heat, this rapid rate of change that began in 2023, and the rate of change has kind of leveled off in 2024, even though the total anomaly is high. We can see it beginning here. The first signal in late spring of 23, we started seeing on that orange line these just really huge increases in daily sea surface temperature. And we can see that we're still really hot. At the end of 2024 here, we're starting to touch another line on the graph, which is actually the entrance into the 2016 El Nino. So our La Nina winter is getting to be as cool as the previous hottest ever winter for sea surface temperatures. Very strange, but not necessarily bad news, right? Like, we're in weird times. We're not going to have great news. Earth's climate systems are all fine. I think it's important to note, though, that this rate of change that we're seeing, it's not as crazy pants here at the end of 2024. Things don't look good by any stretch of the word, but they're not like jumping up again the way that they did in the winter of 23-24. I feel grateful for this time we have. It's very important, this fact that the rate of change is not increasing so quickly anymore. It's important to understand, though, that we are moving into territory that current climate models don't fully explain. This is true even if you look at worst case scenario models, those terrifying models that propose an abrupt transition to exponential heat increases. That's what some people feared we were seeing winter of 23-24, but the data that's come in 24 doesn't fit those models. So that's a really significant, this lack of certainty that we have. And if we look at changes occurring around the globe, it is quite possible that what's happened is we hit a tipping point in Earth's deep systems. Changes in the circulation patterns of the Atlantic Ocean based on salt gradients that weren't projected as at all likely to occur this century, like not at all likely to occur. I feel like we have to ground here because 5 years ago, the idea that we'd be looking at AMOC collapse now would have been extremely out there in the scientific community. There was no evidence for it. But now we are seeing evidence. We are seeing signs that those changes may be underway. This time of rapid change that we're in, we're going to feel it. We're going to feel it at a societal level. This isn't a change against which it's possible to be totally insulated, and I hope that the best modeling information we can get does help point us in the right way towards areas of relative stability in this time of rapid change. A lot of the projection in the NCA5 has already been surprisingly useful as we look back at 2024. For example, the figures on where to expect deluge-type rain. So that's figure 2.12 in the NCA5, and I want to draw your attention to this little dot where we would expect deluge-type rain in the midst of a pattern of really not deluge-type rain, of really a push towards more gentle rain. Little dot right there. Let's look on maps. That little dot I noticed was right over Roswell, because I have some friends in Roswell. I've been there a few times. And then in October, we saw this terrible flooding in Roswell in October of 2024. Going back to the figure, when I saw that news about the deluge, about that terrible flooding coming to Roswell, the precision there in figure 2.12, I felt a real trembling in my gut, a real sense of fear, and a sense of the importance of what the projection information can do for us, the importance of the warnings that we may have in the projection information. And, I know what a deluge can do in the Southwest. I spent a lot of time in the Southwest when I was in my 20s. I've been called back there again. I feel like I need to go wandering a little bit, getting ready to go out there again. I feel like if you have an impulse and there's no harm in it, you should just follow the impulse, right? And that's why I'm going to tell you this story now. I have a story I want to tell you, and I'm just going to do my best with the weaving of these threads. So, when I was younger, I did work with NASA, and I'm going to pop a couple of papers up here. You can check them out. That's me, my maiden name. I did research in a microbiology lab looking at how host pathogen interactions changed during space flights. This is another one we did, and there I am again. This was a big team. This was a sizable research team. And thinking back in that time where I was working on my doctorate, working at the wet bench in microbiology, the work I did as part of that big team was on the host side of things, not the pathogen side. So I worked with human cells. I did experiments to help us understand what spaceflight would do to human cells. And before I did that work, and I was about 22 at the time I did that work, I'd grown up on a rich diet of golden age science fiction. I grew up imagining a humanity that could spread across the stars. But then I did this work. I looked deep into the workings of human cells. You know, epithelial cells, the cells of your skin, the cells that hold you together. On the outside and on the inside, the lining of your gut, for example, where your body takes in food and water, that's made out of epithelial cells. Those were the cells that I worked with. I was an expert on organotypic tissue culture for growing human epithelial cells in the lab. We know that space is hard on the human body. Astronauts have to work out all the time in space. Like they're always riding the space bike up in the International Space Station to maintain the health of their bones so that they can come back to Earth. And astronauts, they have a higher risk for cancers. They have serious health complications potentially from going into space. It isn't talked about much, but it is true that almost everyone who goes to space gets pretty serious diarrhea. That's with strict quarantine before missions. That's with intensive disinfection of food and supplies before missions. And that's why the lab that I was participating in there existed, because what we studied was enteric pathogens, diseases of the gut, diseases that give you diarrhea, including in space. And why couldn't the best technology we had at our disposal stop our astronauts from getting sick? That was a big part of our job, was helping to answer that question. In those papers that I showed, our team learned that bacteria become more dangerous in space. The normal bacteria of your gut, bacteria that live sometimes in low levels in your gut without making you sick on Earth, when they're exposed to microgravity, to zero gravity, it makes them want to kill you. The evidence is strong, and that's the essence of those published findings I popped up on the screen a minute ago, is that your gut flora will want to kill you if you make them go to space. And it's not just an impulse, they'll act on it. If you make them go to space, your gut flora will give murdering you a solid try. So that was like pretty alarming, right? Because you can't sterilize the human gut. We kind of need our microbiome. Now, my findings, and remember, I worked with the host side, the human cell side, not the pathogen side, the bacteria side. They weren't published because we hoped something was wrong with the cells, the human cells. Tissue culture work is very delicate. It's very easy for cell lines to become contaminated, even with best practices. We hoped that the work I did could be replicated and would turn out that my results could be contradicted and the replication, the findings would be different. because we hoped that in space we wouldn't really lose the ability of our cells to build tight junctional proteins. I gotta explain that phrase, tight junctional proteins. You know, like snaps on clothing or on a bag or baby clothes. Those have a lot of those little metal snaps. Tight junctional proteins, they're like the snaps that let your cells stick together. My experiments showed that our ability to make a tight skin, a skin that provides an effective barrier over the fragile oil and water and sparks that are our lives, my experiments showed that in space, this ability is severely impaired. The cells stop making the snaps that let the cells stick together right. The cells forget how to be together. They forget how to form community. There are more and more, over time, just a cell and a cell and a cell, not the skin that they should be. Some people, they want to go to space. They have this dream in them still of a humanity flourishing, spread across a field of glittering stars. But I can say what I saw. There's deep evidence biologically that that dream will not happen, at least not through rockets or even generation ships. And maybe we could learn to generate gravity, like maybe, but we really suck at that now. And there are really big complex problems, and we have a bigger problem that needs our attention, our home, life on Earth. We feel very empowered to speak freely because of the AR community. I have good news to share. There is no concern. Will I be able to continue to do my best to serve our needs through this work, through this year to come? I will. I will be able to continue, even with the seriousness of my husband's illness, even with the many difficulties of life we all feel. Through your gifts, my family is held up. I announced in November that AR is running in the black. Already, I can take no more cases until well into February. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to continue to serve our community. And let me tell you also, I have recently received a great gift, a very meaningful gift. Thanks to the generosity of a family that cares about the future of life, that cares about our shared future within our entire family of life. I find myself in a position of unexpected strength, security, and freedom. I'm thinking deeply about what to do. There's an opportunity now here for unfurling, for growth and tendrils to go out. I will talk more with the community about this, about the actions I will take. But I wanted to tell you now this good news. And I wanted to say thank you for these gifts. There are many ways, actually, that I have been offered and turned away financial support over these past 3 years. The biggest unifier behind these stories, there's no reason to tell, is that I'm strongly opposed to geoengineering, particularly by any methods that utilize aluminum or aluminum-based compounds. Like, if you want to use volcanic equivalent chemicals, maybe you can make the case for that. We understand the effects of those chemicals. We know all the ways they suck. And most importantly, the Earth knows how to deal with them. But this push to use aluminum type compounds for geoengineering, we should have some humility. How can we not have some humility at this juncture where there are so many ways we clearly don't fully understand what's going on? You know, my academic background is 10 years of comms research. I became a specialist in how to communicate complex information to the public. Before that, from 14 to 24, I was in the lab all the time. I was in the lab all the time at IMSA, an Illinois State School for the Gifted. My bachelor's is in biology from Illinois Wesleyan. I keep that on the wall back there because I love IWU. I went straight from there into a PhD program in microbiology. First at Tulane, and then there was Katrina, and then I moved to Arizona State University to continue my education. I never did research in climate science. I didn't work until climate until 2015. But that's how I got here. That's what I bring to the table on this one. And we need everyone at the table to work this big problem. The problem facing our home, the problem facing life on Earth. A lot of the models, A lot of the ways we look at this big problem, we're using physics and chemistry, and those are cool and powerful branches of science. But this is a life problem. We need biology at this table in a big way. If we want to squeeze as much as we can through this bottleneck, we need marine microbiology in a big way. We need the great lungs of the planet, the photosynthetic organisms of the ocean to be seen, to be involved in this response. And it's not just a science problem. We need people from all backgrounds, all cultures, all kinds of educational background, including no formal education. We need people who are devoted to life on Earth. We need everyone who loves and seeks to be of service to our home planet and to all the beings who make our own lives possible, people who understand and fully embody this ultimate truth of life here on Earth, that we are because they are. We exist because all the diversity of life exists. I am here because of all the life that makes my life possible. This is a life problem. None of us can solve it on our own, but I deeply believe that what each of us does matters. The habitat restoration my family has done, it's increased the diversity and abundance of life in our area. Our work on the ground has built up the great storehouse of life, the living soil. And I hear from so many of you. I know there are so many of us doing this work, each in our small way. This is the work that matters to go forward. This is the work that matters, the work of nourishing life, thinking generationally about life, taking our place as stewards, as caregivers, as nurturers of life. We understand, of course, it's extremely tempting to look away from this life problem, to find any other solution, any other problem to work on. But there's a good reason that space exploration has focused on robots very strongly for the last 20 years. We need to look at our wound. We need to look at our wound here on Earth. It's a life problem. In the new year to come, many bad things are going to happen. But there will also be opportunities for action. And this is a time of rapid change. That means there are opportunities for change. Change in the ways we talk to each other. Change in the ways we approach this big problem. When I was looking for funding to start AR in the professional world, I was told there was no audience for this information, that no one would care, that people had no interest, and that they couldn't understand it anyway. That's another thing I was told often. And when I told people I was going to start a nonprofit to address this educational need, I was told you need 1.5 million at least, and you're never going to make it. But I want you to remember, our big problem isn't a problem that has to be worked big. We can work it small. I saved up $40,000 and I put it into AR, into some runway where I wouldn't need to do other work outside the home. And my family, we cut our expenses so much as we could. Now I can operate AR full time and support my family on $40,000 a year. We didn't need $1.5 million to get this information out there. People think all big, put $1 billion into a rocket, but what takes that down is the tiny snaps that hold our cells together. If you are constrained, if, like me, you're not in a position of wealth and power, if you know big can't happen for you, that's why I wanted you to hear those numbers. AR took the low angle. We went small, and AR can demonstrate an impact footprint of 185,000 individuals in 2024 alone. There is no organization like ours. Nonprofits often talk about impact ratios, impacts per dollar. We have broken the mold on impact ratios. We are facing a future that will be more challenging than the past. We are not just living in a time of high change and great uncertainty, but a painful and scary time where some systems will come to an end. But if we care enough and do the real work, That also is a time for new beginnings. We must make the right path to walk. We must make a path that takes us out of overshoot. Thank you for being here with me and for all of your support these years to bring us to this place where we can bounce back. We can consider and we can think, how will we magnify our impact in the year to come in an unexpected way in this time of unexpected change? So many of us here, we see the problem. We are working together to see it so clearly as we can. And I am so grateful that I will be able to keep doing the best I can so long as I can to bring you the information that I hope will help you work the problem, because we gotta work it small. We have done so much already, and there's so much left to save. So I hope we will work together on this problem for a long time. If we are so fortunate, let it be a generational time. I hope you will join me now to rest. This is a time for resting. The earth calls for times of resting at this season in the places where many of us live. The work for the new year to come, it will be great. We have a lot of work to do, but there are many of us at the table to do this work. And I believe that the impact of our work will continue to grow. I'm so proud of what we have accomplished together. I'm so glad that we believed in each other. Let us take a moment before we begin the next stage. Please, if you are able, take a moment for joy. Let us gather strong. Let us return to the resilience center so fully as we are able as we prepare for the year to come. For many of us, this will be the year of the land. Let's get ready. Hey folks, thanks for watching. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the AR community, to the donors, to the volunteers, to everyone spreading the word online, and especially to everyone doing the work in your households and on the ground. It's thanks to all of you that I can keep doing this work, and I'm so grateful for your support. I'm glad to be getting ready with you, and I look forward to talking with you all again soon.